I have the honor of running the California Community Foundation. We've been around for 110 years. We've seen Los Angeles grow up during that time, and we've actually had a wildfire fund for 25 years. It was the way that Angelino supported survivors around the country. And so when the fires hit Los Angeles, we already had a structure in place. We had given out $25 million during that time prior, and we had a way to invite fellow Angelinos to support each other. And so we announced it to the community, to the rest of the state and the country, and then the world. And I committed that whatever we raised in the first 30 days, we would give half of it to the community, to survivors. And so in the first week, we raised $6 million, and then it went to 15 million, and then to 30 million. And then ultimately in 30 days, we raised $60 million. So the team at the California Community Foundation worked literally 24/7 to give out $30 million in 30 days to 220 nonprofits serving Altadena and the Palisades in Malibu and Pasadena. And the way we did it is that we pulled out the old COVID list, knowing that many of the most vulnerable survivors were also vulnerable during that time. We reached out to folks in the community who we knew, and we made sure that we supported every place of worship that were lost. There were 13 places of worship in both communities. We supported every senior center, every school, every community center, every YMCA. There were two of them lost in both communities. And we didn't ask for anything. We literally called them and said, "We are supporting you," and issued out checks immediately and asked and trusted them to support those in the community. And we also knew that not only were those people who lost their homes impacted, losing everything, their housing, their vehicles, their prescriptions, their documents, losing literally everything. But we also knew that there were thousands of displaced workers also impacted. And I've been to both communities multiple times. I've had the opportunity to meet many of the survivors. I remember meeting a woman in Altadena who in her mid-80s, who literally lost the only home that she's ever known in her entire life. She was born and raised in the same exact house, a home that her parents bought after they escaped the Tulsa massacre. It was she inherited that home, and she, like many people in Altadena, doesn't have the proof that that home was inherited to her. So she has a unique problem where she doesn't have that documentation. And Altadena is such a special place where there's multi-generational wealth. 80% of African American own their property in Altadena. Significant multi-generational wealth in that community. She is not alone, and she literally lost everything. Healthcare, her 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 very own documentations and immediate housing. And then remember meeting another family, a very young family on the other spectrum with three young kids, all under the age of 3. They had attended a fair that we had that was put together by one of a resource fair that they were living all the way in Fontana. That's literally on the other in the Inland Empire. They had driven to the valley because they saw this online, and they were sharing the story that they lost their home in Altadena. They both parents grew up in Altadena. Their both of their parents lost their home in Altadena. So their immediate circle of support was all without homes. And so they went to this resource fair to get diapers and basic essentials. And the head of the household lost his job in the Palisades. You all know these stories because many of you experienced them. And so for us, our role was what has been to support those organizations on the ground, providing those immediate needs for those families, for the most vulnerable who need it. And we're so fortunate that in 1 year, we raised over $100 million. And what's most incredible about that, what still gives me chills, is that it came from 48,000 individual people from around the country, around the world. 48,000 individuals decided that they love Los Angeles, that they related. Girl Scout troops in Minnesota, the government of South Korea, cities in Japan, literally neighbors in the Bay Area and in New York and Chicago. People came together to support LA. And for us, as a community foundation, we've been around for a long time, and the commitment that we've made is that we are going to support survivors for as long as it takes. Through the entire arc of recovery. The first 30 days was for the immediate support that families need, that individuals needed. Now the harder part really is ahead of us, the actual recovery. There were a lot of people that I called during this period of time. I'm fortunate that I did not lose my home, but I know a lot of people who have. It's almost impossible to be anywhere in Southern California and not know someone who wasn't impacted. My cousin lost his home in Altadena, and he was one of the first people I called. And I asked him, "What are your plans?" And he said, "I can't think about it. My family and I decided we're going to find a place and not think about it for 1 full year. We just can't. We have to stabilize our own thinking and so that helped give me perspective." But another person I called is Evan Spiegel. And Evan Spiegel, of course, is the co-founder and CEO of Snap. And Evan and I have worked together on a number of different issues, including the pandemic. The fires were still happening when I reached out to him. And knowing that this was a big moment for LA, I asked him, I said, "I think there's a role for the civic community of Los Angeles here to step up. We really need to find a way to come together as a community." So what we decided to do is we called other survivors. Evan brought together the folks from Beyond the Fire, and we convened survivors for the first time of both Altadena and the Palisades in one place, literally weeks after the fire. And for those of you who don't know Southern California, I mean, it is an enormous place, 10 million people in LA County. And there's not too much connective tissue between these two communities, very distinct communities. One on the foothill of the mountains. If you ever watch the Rose Parade, it's right there. And literally the other one right at the ocean. It's the LA that most people think that don't live in LA that we all live. And so we actually brought everybody together. There were about 50 survivors in that room, didn't know each other. And the most powerful part of that meeting was when everybody introduced themselves. When people for the first time introduced themselves and told a little bit about their story. It was a powerful moment for people to describe a little bit of what they went through, but most important, they heard from other people tell their story. And suddenly they realized that they weren't alone, that other Angelinos had gone through the same exact thing in a different part of town with different occupations and different life experiences, maybe different incomes, different ways of life. But at the end of the day, the trauma was the same. And then they heard from survivors from around the country who told their own stories. And they gave tremendous advice about what to do. But the most important advice that they gave, and many of you were there, is that you lead your own recovery. That the difference between a fast recovery and a not so fast recovery is not government, it's you. And how organized you are and how determined you are in leading your own recovery, and how much the broader community supports you in that effort. And from that, the Department of Angels was born. And the Department of Angels is a very basic concept. It's about bringing together survivors and the network of survivors that have emerged from the various distinctive communities in Southern California and supporting them in whatever way they need support. Let me give a shout out to the Department of Angels team that's sitting right here. And the intention is to center the survivor experience throughout the entire process. Because as we know, that every single day that passes, the experience of January 7th fades and other things take precedent. And it's our job as the Department of Angels is to constantly remind everyone that the survivor experience continues and that we cannot forget what they're going through. And so as those of you who are here who are survivors know that when you're going through this process, it feels like you're going through it by yourself, where your insurance company is not returning your calls or you're going through the seventh adjuster. It feels like maybe it's just me. But when you start aggregating the experience of multiple survivors and you start realizing that it's the majority of survivors that are experiencing, it's not just you, it's actually systemic. And it's from that experience that it's what we're doing is supporting the community and elevating those experiences and demanding a change in the system, not only for the immediate issues that survivors are experiencing, but for the long term. We've often heard in Los Angeles, people are celebrating that we've had the fastest cleanup in the history of the country. It is true, that has happened. What isn't talked about is the reason why it's the fastest. And that is that unlike other parts of the country, the properties that were cleaned were not certified. And so 6 inches of soil were removed and you were told, good luck. And so now there's a gap in government. No one's in charge, literally, as we've discovered, no one is in charge of determining what the standard should be for the soil testing. No one's in charge of determining who you should hire to test that soil. No one's in charge in determining who will pay for the mitigations when you find contaminants in that soil. I've been in government for most of my career. 16 years at the County of Los Angeles, 8 years at the City of Los Angeles, and even I was shocked to find that out. And we learned that by surveying the survivors, and by actually through the partnership of Philanthropy. I want to give a shout out to my colleague Nina, who's here with the Balmer Group. And at Philanthropy, we work together in Southern California. Fire Aid, led by the Balmer Group and Annenberg, came together and raised $100 million, and also gave out a significant amount to many of the same groups we supported for immediate relief. And they just released a report yesterday that talked about their incredible support in the community. But it was through Philanthropy that we started random testing, and found out that the soil was in fact contaminated. And so now we're pushing for accountability at the county level and at the state level, so that survivors understand who to go to finally get their soil cleaned. And for those who have a home, their house was spared in a neighborhood that wasn't, who's supposed to clean their home and test it? I know a lot of people who are in that situation who are struggling right now. So the role of Philanthropy is not to replace the role of government, to be clear. We could all basically spend down our endowments collectively, and we wouldn't be able to replace government for one day. The role of Philanthropy is to fill in gaps and to support the community in holding government accountable to do its job. And so our role is to help create organizations like the Department of Angels, like supporting the network of organizations on the ground that are sharing information with each other. That is the number one way people actually get information. We found out through our survey, which is something I'm sure all of you already know, is not through the newspaper. It's not through a government official. It's through a neighbor. That's how people find out what to do. So that network is very important. And we also do it by meeting immediate needs. In government, they couldn't give out $30 million in 30 days if they tried. It would be impossible. And so our role is to respond in that way. So I'll end with my last important point here, because I think this is a very powerful room. The question of wildfire response and the larger question around disaster response is being debated nationally, as we all know. And the role of government at the federal level is being in a pinball game. And what worries me in that context is the collateral damage of survivors during that debate. And it doesn't matter who you voted for or what your political views are. I think there should be one basic understanding that the role of government should be, under any circumstance, that when your home catches on fire or is devastated by an earthquake or a flood or a hurricane, that the role of government is to be there for you no matter what. That should not be debated. It should not matter if you're a donor state like California or you're a receiver state like others. This is where we should all be there for each other. And as it was stated, no one is here to save us but ourselves. It's going to require people like all of us to demand that, to insist that beyond the politics, that the issue of natural disaster response be put aside and protected. That we not play politics with that issue. It is part of the reason we're sending a Department of Angels, a delegation of survivors to Washington to remind our members of Congress, the administration, those in various agencies, that regardless of how you feel about California, there are real people here that are impacted. We deserve to receive support during our time of crisis in the same way that we want people in North Carolina to get support, and those in Florida and those in Texas. They all deserve support. We deserve support too. So I urge all of us to think about this work in a way that is intentional, to take the pain that has been experienced individually and as a community, and the incredible power that exists within this room and in the broader communities that each one of you represent, and to insist that we not play politics with something as fundamental as a national response to our disasters. We need to insist on that. No matter what state you're in, no matter who your representative, no matter what your politics are. That is something that we will have to insist on. And at the California Community Foundation, we are here and we will always be here to support you. Thank you.